We're going to go behind enemy lines here today on Locked On Vols. Crossover edition. Locked On Aggies meets Locked On Vols. Eric Cain, Andrew Stefaniak. What is there to know about the A&M Aggies? We'll hear about it all in today's Locked On Crossover edition of Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Crossover Edition. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Aggies. I am Locked On Vols host Eric Cain, and that is Locked On Aggies host Andrew Stefaniak. Andrew, appreciate you being here, man. This should be a really fun game coming up on Saturday, and obviously a fun show here today previewing it.
Oh, yeah, I love doing these crossovers, getting to talk with the other SEC hosts, getting to chop it up and learn about each other's teams, talk about some pains we've all been through. It's a good time, and this will be a fun ball game.
This episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to go ahead and get started today. So what's on the rundown here today? We're going to take you through the seasons to date for Tennessee and Texas A&M, some of those main storylines. When we come back in segment 2, look at the quarterback comparisons, Joe Milton versus Max Johnson. Who needs to have the better day? I'll take a look through the injury reports for both teams. And then before we get out the door, we'll tell you our keys to victory for Tennessee and Texas A&M. And, of course, the score predictions, who we're going to take, Tennessee or Texas A&M at Neyland Stadium. With that being said, Andrew, kind of start us off here. Texas A&M to date, 4-2 record, 2-1 in the SEC, a hard-fought loss at home to Alabama this past weekend. Lost your starting quarterback, but pretty nice backup quarterback in Max Johnson to fall back into. How's A&M been treating you so far this season?
You know, it's been a year of, I'd call it what ifs. There's some things that I think Aggie fans would want back. Last week against Alabama, Alabama did everything in their power to hand you that football game, and the Aggies just wouldn't take it. That was extremely frustrating. That loss hurts you. The Miami game was a little painful as well because the defensive coordinator, Coach DJ Durkin, just hadn't figured out his defense yet. He wasn't sending pressure. Now, obviously, Texas A&M is one of the best teams when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback, getting sacks. So it's been a year where you'd like a couple ball games back, and maybe this would be a different season. But sitting at the point right now, Texas A&M's got a good football team. You lose your starter, but you've got a backup who can win football games at this level, and that's a good thing to have that not everybody does have in college football.
Yeah, for Tennessee, so much high expectations. Every single year there's high expectations in Knoxville for Tennessee. But coming off the 11-win season last year, and it was so much fun. It was a magical year. You have a 4-1 record. You've lost one game, but it feels like it's been kind of a disappointment so far. I think the Florida loss, that one loss, was just so bad. I mean, Tennessee was favored by a touchdown. It was on the road. Tennessee was kind of a shell of itself. And I think the lack of explosive plays offensively has been a little bit concerning because, again, nobody expected Joe Milton to be Hendon Hooker, but I don't think anybody expected the lack of explosive plays down the field because that's been kind of a trademark of Tennessee's offense under Josh Heupel. So, the offense still very much a work in progress. You got a quarterback that is the best-looking game manager in the country right now. He's not losing Tennessee games, but he's not the reason Tennessee is winning games. Offensive line's very much a work in progress. Good run game, one of my favorite storylines of this one, and we'll get to in a moment. Tennessee's run game, rush defense for Texas A&M. Wide receivers been a little hot and cold, getting better of late, but of course you lost Brew McCoy. And then you look defensively, and I think Tennessee's taken a step defensively, especially getting after the passer, and that's another storyline, defensive rush against defensive rush for both of these teams. So big game. Tennessee's got a tough month of October, starting at home. You had a bye week, then you're starting at home with A&M, then you're on the road at Alabama, and then Kentucky. So from a Tennessee perspective, this is kind of one that you want to get. And obviously, Andrew, it should be just an incredible atmosphere at Neyland Stadium Saturday at 3:30.
Always credit those fans in Tennessee. Always credit Neyland Stadium. I mean, you can't. I talked about it on my show as one of the biggest matchups for the Aggies on Saturday is being prepared for that crowd noise because Neyland is it's truly an incredible atmosphere. I always say I need to get down there for a ball game at some point, but this is going to be a ball game where I think that you see some strengths on weaknesses and strengths on strengths that are going to be big keys in this ball game. And I know we're going to get into the keys, but I look at this game and I think a lot of it's going to come down to quarterback play. We're going to get into that, but this game is just going to be one of those where I think that it's going to take a great game from Texas A&M to leave with a win, and I think a bad game from Tennessee to kind of drop this one. It just feels like the home field advantage there could end up being too much, to where I think the Aggies are going to have to put together a solid game, which one thing we talk about a ton is with the talent on their roster, on Texas A&M's roster, it's possible at any point that team can pop and put together an incredible performance. It's a talented football team. Nobody ever questions that. The question is, can they put it together? Can the coaching staff put them in a position to succeed? So far this season, you've had a couple good game plans. I liked the game plan against Auburn. I liked the game plan against Arkansas. I liked it against Alabama. I just don't think you made enough adjustments in the second half. But no, I think this is going to be a ball game that's going to come down to just, can Tennessee do what they need to do at home? I think if they can do what they need to do at home, I think they're going to win this game. I think if Tennessee doesn't play their best football game and A&M comes out firing, I think this could be one that leans more in the Aggies' favor. So I think it's going to kind of come down to that kind of stuff.
You reference A&M as being a team that could pop at any second. That's kind of how I view Tennessee offensively. Like, there's still, I mean, Joe Milton, down the field passing, throws 20 yards or more down the field. He's really struggled this year. Intermediate, he's been worse, 10 to 19 yards. But, within 10 yards at the line of scrimmage, he's been really good. And Tennessee's called a lot of their game plans, out on the perimeter around the line of scrimmage, whether that be because of Milton, the offensive line, the whole operation. I don't know, probably a little bit of everything. But, Milton has all the tools, and he has his entire collegiate career. If he's ever to put it together for that Heisman, he's not going to be a Heisman finalist, don't hear me wrong. But if you have a Heisman-like game, wouldn't shock anybody whatsoever. And maybe that's A&M, or maybe that's on the road here in a couple weeks. We'll see. Main storylines, I already mentioned a couple. The number one main storyline, I think, coming into this game is, one, Tennessee, the win streak at Neyland, which is really, really impressive, and then the lack of a quality road win for A&M. Correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this streak goes back to 2021. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since Jimbo Fisher and A&M has won a quality road game, under this regime. So I think that is a huge storyline. It's one that you can't just skim over. I saw firsthand how the effect of the swamp from the crowd noise affected Tennessee. And then I saw it at South Carolina a week and a half ago with Tennessee on third down, those fans giving Spencer Rattler all he could handle, false start, back it up 3rd and 15. So I think that is a huge thing. And then obviously it's, the best rushing attack in the SEC right now, Tennessee, against the best rush defense of A&M, 84 yards a game on average so far. That's going to be an excellent matchup.
And one thing, I'm going to just keep talking good about my Vol fans, my friends that are Vol fans. I'll tell you right now, I hope there's no Florida fans listening, but the Swamp and Neyland, we're not even going to have that conversation because I don't think it compares. Neyland is just something else. I'm going to keep saying it. But, on that storyline, I saw that stat you're referencing, the how many games in a row A&M's lost on the road and how good Tennessee's been playing in Neyland. That is one of those where my buddy, my roommate, we always joke and we say, on the betting perspective, it's like you're due or you've won a bunch in a row, and you can make the argument each way, but that's a good storyline, and it's a good thing to look at. It's like, can Texas A&M go on the road? If you think about it, they haven't played a real genuine road test this year. Look at their schedule. They've played the Miami game. We all know there's no atmosphere there. They played Arkansas in the Cowboys Stadium. The atmosphere there, it's half home fans. It wasn't really anything crazy. This is hundreds of thousands of trillions of people that want you to lose a football game, and they're going to make that very clear and make their presence felt. And so how will Texas A&M respond to that? That's going to be a really interesting factor in this game that's more than just X's and O's.
It's going to be a good one, and I can't wait to continue to break this down every single angle of the game. We'll take a look at the quarterbacks, Max Johnson versus Joe Milton, and we'll take a look at the injury report. That is coming up next as we cross over here on Locked On. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Aggies. I don't want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season right now with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get up to $200 in bonus bets back guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's all it takes right there. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about jumping into this realm, this world, joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to take advantage of this action because you can bet on the spreads, all right? The spreads, the totals, hit those overs, hit those unders. But what I encourage you to do if you're new to the game, take a look at these player props. They're fun. They're easy. So say in this football game, I don't have it in front of me right now, say Joe Milton, 225.5 passing yards. You know, that's his total, right? You want to say he's going to do more than that, over or hit the under. Those are so much fun. Or, you know, who scores first quarter spread, all that and more. That's where it gets really, really fun. You can do it over at FanDuel Sportsbook for the Tennessee-Texas A&M game or any NFL game this Sunday as well. So I encourage you to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off this NFL season here today. FanDuel, it is the official FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back into the Locked On crossover edition. Locked On Vols meets Locked On Aggies. I'm Locked On Vols host Eric Cain with Locked On Aggies host Andrew Stefaniak. Andrew, we've done one crossover before. It's been a minute. Before we hit record, meant to clarify to make sure I am pronouncing your last name correctly. I am, right?
Yeah, you are. You had it great.
See, I should have just kept rolling with it. Confidence is key, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at these quarterbacks. We've mentioned it a little bit already. Joe Milton versus Max Johnson. Now, Max Johnson's not the starting quarterback for Texas A&M. That was Connor Wagman. Wagman, unfortunately, is out for the rest of the season. But I'm not saying Max Johnson's an upper echelon quarterback in the country, but what a luxury to have a former starting quarterback in this league and Max Johnson that can step in and just go ahead and play. How is this offense similar? How is this offense different? And kind of what's that vibe offensively with Max Johnson now at the helm for the Aggies?
It's a great question. I actually was going to ask Coach Fisher that exact question on the SEC teleconference last Wednesday and couldn't get a question in. I'll have to ask him that, get the coach's answer. But from my perspective, watching these ball games, it's a very similar offense. Wigman is a little bit more athletic than Max Johnson, but Max Johnson can move with the football on the ground. He's not a speedster, but he is quick enough that if he gets outside the pocket, if he doesn't have something he likes downfield, he'll take off and get you 6-7. He won't throw it away. He'll instead of throwing it away, he'll try and pick up 4 or 5 or 6 with his legs. He's athletic enough to do that. We saw a few plays when Wigman was in where he had a few drawn up runs this year, not a ton. I mean, he was a pocket passer. And so with Johnson taken over, he throws a pretty deep ball. That is the calling card to Max Johnson. It always amazes me at guys that I think throw a better deep ball than they do intermediate passes. But his deep ball, he throws some pretty downfield passes. So the offense to me, frankly, is similar. It's not like you're going from Cam Newton to Tom Brady. It's an offense that these two guys are somewhat similar. And I think you have a nice thing in Max Johnson. I've talked about it. Not a lot of SEC schools have a backup quarterback that has played and won games in the SEC before. So having an experienced guy like Max Johnson, who he is, what he brings to the table, it's an advantage that some teams flat out just don't have. But yeah, I think this offense is similar, and it's going to be interesting to with whichever quarterback's in there, and it's going to be interesting to see Milton/Johnson, who's going to have the better football game. I think it's going to be a fun one, and I think Milton's got a lot to prove on Saturday. I think he could have a big game, and it'll be interesting to see if Max Johnson can hang with him.
Yeah, Joe Milton and Tennessee both have a lot to prove on Saturday, and I want to get to that in a moment, but I want to continue to grill you on A&M real quick. Just when you look at the stats, everything, this team on paper, just so much improvement from 2022 to 2023. Defense alone, worst to first in terms of rush defense, leading the SEC in total defense, all that and stuff. But offensively, it's kind of middle of the road offensively. But if you look, vast improvements there as well. 35 points a game, 420 yards of total offense, throwing it for 275 yards on average, rushing for 144 on average. Bobby Petrino, I think everybody, myself included, said this will be boom or bust. It will be really, really good and work out well for A&M and Jimbo Fisher, or boy, about week 5, week 6, it is going to come crashing down. So far, so good. If Jimbo will just get out of his way and let Bobby go to work, I mean, he's improved, and A&M offensively looks pretty competent.
A&M. So this is an interesting stat that's going to kind of make people that haven't watched every A&M game kind of go, oh, okay. They've moved the football well against everybody. Even last week against Alabama, where you only put up 20 points, you still here's the issue right here. It's simple as this, and this is something Coach Fisher's talked about, and that needs to do better. Texas A&M this season has been in the red zone 28 times and scored 16 touchdowns for a percent of 57. Coach Fisher says he wants that around the 75% mark.
Yeah.
So they've been getting there a lot, but it's been a lot of they're letting defenses bend, not break, and they're putting up 3. They've gone for it on 4th and goal to go, or 4th and 1 from the 6 a few times and not gotten it. So it's been a lot of, hey, we're here in the red zone, but we're not putting up touchdowns or putting up field goals, or we're turning it over on downs. And then a few missed field goals. I don't know if they've missed any in the red zone. I don't think so. I think maybe 1 or 2. But point is that I think this offense has been great, truly. I just think they need to punch the football in more than they have. That's been the issue, just blaringly looking at these numbers. They have not been punching it in inside the 20 as much as they should. And if they start to do that better, here's the deal. If you turn 3 points into 7, you're going to win more football games.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's been the offensively, they moved it with Connor Wigman. They've moved it with Max Johnson. The running game, I'll be honest with you, I think those numbers, frankly, have been boosted by a few big runs in garbage time. There have been a few, like against Arkansas and against Auburn, we had a couple 75-yard runs in the 4th quarter that just really didn't do anything for anybody but just make stats look better. So I think that to be brutally honest, the running game is a concern for me. Passing attack, I have all the confidence in the world. Obviously it's the Max Johnson show now. I have all the confidence in the world in them. Yeah, but the rushing attack, will they move the football on the ground against Tennessee? We'll see. But if they don't, it's going to be a concern.
So we're talking quarterbacks here and a little bit offense in segment number 2. We'll get to injuries here in just a couple of seconds, really, before we get into our keys to the game and our score predictions in segment 3. For Joe Milton, I'm not going to sit here and say Tennessee's run game is going to get shut down like it did against Florida, because I don't think that's going to be the case. I think playing at home is a completely different story. I think Tennessee, it's got its best offensive lineman back in Cooper Mays at center. I just think the whole operation looks a little cleaner. I think they're going faster. That helps when you get your center back. And so I think Tennessee's going to run the ball a little bit. Now, is Tennessee going to run for 250 yards? I doubt it. A&M is a great rush defense. But is Tennessee going to be held to 45 yards like, Alabama was, or whatever the case was? I don't think so. I really don't. However, I'm not sure if Tennessee's going to win this game, it's going to be on the backs of the 3-headed monster in the backfield, and Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson. Joe Milton is going to have to hit some plays down the field. It's going to have to. And it looks like, and feel free to jump in, there's opportunities there in the A&M secondary. Jalen Milroe, Alabama can reach its absolute ceiling this year with Jalen Milroe reaching his ceiling. More so than Buckner, more so than Simpson. What you saw against A&M from Jalen Milroe, it's like, whew, okay, well, if Alabama does that, then watch out. Alabama's going to be dangerous with a dangerous quarterback because he's already a dynamic athlete that can run. If you look at Milroe and Milton as a passer, most everybody's going to say, all right, give me Milton all day. That's just kind of the eye test here. You see what Milroe does in one-on-one matchups and man coverage down the field last week. It's like, boy, Joe Milton, Tennessee's going to take some shots. Joe Milton just got to hit on some of those. So that's a huge key for me. It's that secondary for A&M. Joe Milton, can you hit on a few down the field? Can you? He is 8 for 30 this year on passes 20 yards down the field, which is not good. But Tennessee will take those shots. Now, there's been some drops in there. There's been some misalignments, all that. That's football. But I'm looking for Milton going down and attacking that secondary during the course of this football game and seeing how many of those you can hit. And if Tennessee hits on a couple of them, then I think that could be the difference in the football game.
The secondary, it's a battle of two issues, in my opinion, from the Miami loss to the to the Alabama loss. In Miami, I talked about how the reason the Aggie fans might want that ball game back is because the defense hadn't really figured itself out yet, to where Coach Durkin was sending 3 men, maybe 4 men. Miami's got a good O-line. Tyler Van Dyke had all day in the pocket, and he just picked the defense apart. And then when it came to the Alabama game, I said, listen, don't let Milroe get outside the pocket, make him beat you with his arm. If he does, tip your cap. And he did. Yeah, he beat you with his arm, and yeah, I did tip my cap on Monday. But point there is, I think that if Milton, will he have time in the pocket? That is what it's going to come down to. I've looking at Tennessee's numbers, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that too. But this offensive line, they have not allowed a bunch of sacks this year. And so if Milton has time in the pocket, I think he's going to have some receivers open just based off what we saw last week. The starter at corner, Josh DeBerry, frankly, got burned a handful of times last year. I think they might lean a different direction this week. They've got some young talent, young freshmen, former high 4-star recruits that they might try and lob out there and see how that goes. But then, hey, you do that. That's still scary in and of itself, thinking we got a freshman playing his first real time in Neyland. I'm going to close my eyes and hope that doesn't go bad. But the point is, I do think if Milton has time in the pocket, which is going to be one of my keys, if he has time in the pocket, I think he's going to be able to complete some downfield throws. If the Texas A&M pass rush is getting home at a high rate, I think that's when Milton could start to make some mistakes. So if he's got time, I think he'll pick the Aggies apart. If he doesn't, that's where the Aggies have a shot to win this one.
A lot of scrimmage game always is in this league. You're absolutely right. Tennessee's offensive line. Stats, sack numbers can be misleading a little bit. I'm not saying this line's been horrible, but it's been very much a work in progress. It has not been clean. Again, getting Cooper Mays back at center, settling in with Gerald Mincey playing right tackle, I think all that kind of helps. So we'll see where it kind of is. But yeah, protecting Milton for sure against that talented pass rush. Already, I believe, 26 sacks on the season for A&M, whereas it had 19 overall a season ago. Hey, keys of the game, official keys of the game coming up next. If we have time, we'll hit a little injury report there towards the end, and we will get into our score predictions against the spread, all that and more. That is coming up next right here on a crossover edition of Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Vols, and Locked On Aggies. I do want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best qualified candidates available. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. We have all been there before, trying to take a step in our career, putting our resume online with hopes of landing that stepping stone job, or maybe your destination job. Maybe you're there now and you're a small business owner, but you can't do it alone. All right, you need some help. You need qualified help and somebody that you can trust. Well, simple tools at LinkedIn Jobs like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can narrow down who you want to interview and then ultimately hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus its leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. A final segment left here of this crossover edition, Locked On Vols, Locked On Aggies. I'm Eric Cain. He is Andrew Stefaniak. All right, quickly, let's go injury report. I'll start with the Vols. Cooper Mays is back. He played center for Tennessee. Of course, Tennessee had the bye week last week, but the week before that, South Carolina, he made his return, so that was huge, getting Cooper Mays back at center. Starting left guard, Andre Carrick. I think he's going to be a game-time decision. Right tackle, Jeremiah Crawford, who, again, kind of splits time with Gerald Mincey. He was available against South Carolina, but they didn't play him because they were trying to rest him. I think he'll be kind of a game-time decision. Of course, Brew McCoy, unfortunately, is going to be lost for the year at wide receiver. I think that's about it offensively. You go to defense. Tennessee got back Elijah Simmons, a defensive tackle presence. He played 12 snaps against South Carolina. That was good to see. Of course, no Keenan Peely at linebacker. And then in the secondary, you're looking at trying to get back starting cornerback and Danico Slaughter. He was, after missing the past couple weeks, he played 6 snaps against South Carolina. So slowly but surely, Tennessee's getting a little bit healthier. One other big injury note, and this is obviously big now because of the depth issues at wide receiver. Dante Thornton, key transfer portal addition from Oregon over the offseason. He missed last week with a hamstring that flared up. Kind of where is he towards the end of this week? Tennessee will need him to step up, obviously, and I bet he will be a game-time decision as well. So Tennessee's getting healthier heading into this game, and certainly benefited from the bye week last week. Andrew, kind of where's A&M at injury concerns right now?
Pretty healthy right now, actually. They were smart. They held some guys out a few weeks ago. The last non-conference game before we really got into SEC play, which I think helped some people with some nagging injuries get right before SEC play started. And now everybody from Coach Fisher's press conference on Monday, it sounds like this team's pretty healthy going into this ball game. And you got to remember, next week is Texas A&M's bye week. So assuming that if you're above 75%, you're playing because you got a bye week after. There are two injuries that of two guys we haven't really seen this year, an offensive lineman that was projected to be a starter in Reuben Fothery, and a corner who I had projected to be a starter in Tony Grimes. Those two guys we haven't seen them yet so far this season. We got an update from Coach Fisher on Monday, and frankly, based on his update, it feels like one of those updates where you're not going to see him. So that's really the only injury updates and players that we expected to have a role that we thought would be out there aren't out there. But when it comes to guys that have been playing so far this year, I think Texas A&M's healthy going into this ball game.
Keys to victory. A lot of these keys to victory can be copy and paste every single week. I feel like, it's football 101. But I'll throw a couple stats out there for you. I don't have the exact stats, and I'm bad at my job. I should have it. But anyway, 150 is where you need to be running the football. Tennessee is the record is so good under Josh Heupel in 2.5 seasons when Tennessee runs for 150 yards in a football game. So running the football, you want to get that. I mean, Tennessee wants to get more than that. Tennessee's averaging over 200 yards a game this season, but that 150 marker is kind of where you want to be on the ground. Get the 150 yards, and against this, again, I continue to say it, 84 yards is all this defense has given up on the ground so far this year on average. And so it's going to be a challenge. But get the 150 yards on the ground for Tennessee and get to 30 points. Again, don't have the stat in front of me. I will do this sooner or later before the game happens. But when Josh Heupel scores 30 points, when Josh Heupel coach teams score 30 points at Tennessee, the record's incredible. I think all but one game, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of Josh Heupel wins, have come by scoring more than 30 points. So those are some two numbers. Like I said earlier, Milton has got to connect on a couple of down-the-field passes. Got to take advantage of one-on-one matchups with the secondary that I think you can exploit. So connect on some down-the-field passes. Don't shy away from the run. Tennessee runs the football. It's the basis of the offense, but sometimes Josh Heupel gets a little pass happy, gets away from it, even when it's going well. Look at the South Carolina game. Stay committed to the run. And then defensively, make matters just worse for Max Johnson. Confuse him. The crowd's going to be a factor. Disguise some things in the back end. Tennessee's got one of the better pass rushing units in the country, along with Texas A&M. Tyler Barron, James Pierce. Get after Max Johnson. I'll make him have his brother at tight end stay in for some six-man protections and try to spark some things defensively. That's kind of my summary, a roundabout keys to victory for Tennessee. What about A&M? If A&M wins this game on the road, what does A&M have to do?
And to me, and we'll run through a couple of keys, but it's the one that is just flashing lights, blaring obvious. You have to do this, and you just got done talking about is Max Johnson has to have time in the pocket. I have talked about this. I have screamed at people on my show throughout the week saying, we have got to get him time. If you don't give Max Johnson time in the pocket, frankly, I think this is a ball game where it's going to be hard to score points when you add the atmosphere factor. He didn't have much time against Alabama, but I'm a big believer in atmosphere. Frankly, I know some are kind of like teams. I'm a big believer in atmosphere and how much it matters. Last week, he didn't have time, and he's playing in front of his home crowd against Alabama. Now you're going to, once again, to a rowdy Neyland Stadium with a lot of people who don't want to see you succeed. That is where, you got to give
Nobody wants to see you succeed. Let's get that accurate. Nobody wants to see you succeed.
That's a good point. Maybe like the A&M people in the press box
Yeah,
and,
yeah, there
and
you
like
go.
the
With the parents in the
SID.
stands.
So
Yeah.
like 10 people, 10 people maybe. But I think that's going to be the number one key. If Max Johnson's on his back looking at the sky all day because he's been sacked 6-7 times, he'll make a mistake. He'll throw a pick. If the offensive line gives him time, he is a good quarterback with a talented group of receivers who can pick you apart. It's going to come down to that. Does he have time in the pocket? The other thing I have is winning the turnover battle. These are two teams, and that's the one I always talk. It's cliche. I know it's cliche, but and like you said, all these keys, they're going to be pretty chalk for most games. This is one. Both of these football teams haven't created that many turnovers. Numbers wise, they're actually both teams are bottom of the conference, relatively bottom of the conference in creating turnovers. So it just feels like in the SEC game, there's always, you look back and there's that one turnover that just really bites you, that really changed the game. And, you don't want it to be your team. I don't want it to be my team. And that's going to be the key, is don't let that one turnover that completely flips momentum be on your team. And I think that it just feels like a game that these teams haven't created a ton of turnovers. Both teams have. You might see that this week where one team does come out and create a bunch of turnovers. So I think that's another battle the Aggies have got to win. And then you got to find a way to run the football. I've talked about the struggle there. I'm a big believer in balance on offense, which I know that's not a hard-hitting statement. I think any football mind would agree there. But you have to have balance on the offensive side of the football. If you're running, if you can't run the football, it's pretty easy to say, okay, if they're not running the football well, their offensive line can't get a push. We can just really send 8 guys out there and say, beat us that way. And you can't beat us with your arm if we have all these guys in the secondary. So I think that you have to create balance via being able to run the football. And I don't know if the Aggies are able to do it. They haven't, like I said, I think the numbers have been a little bit boosted by a couple big runs in some garbage time situations to where the numbers generally aren't, great. So that's going to be, those are the big keys to me. And then lastly is just the secondary holding up. The pass rush is going to be there. I didn't say that as a key because I'm confident in the pass rush to be there. It's going to be, can the secondary hold up and cover these receivers? Because if they struggle and Milton does have his, hey, I'm still here kind of game, hitting receivers downfield, completing those passes of 20 or more yards, that's where Tennessee could put up a lot of points and kind of leave you in the dust.
Tennessee running backs, you better block this week. Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, not the best pass blocking bunch in the backfield. So you better step up and be an extra set of eyes there, and be a dump off option as well if somebody gets back there to Milton. All right, last thing at the time of this recording, the as you've seen on the bottom ticker on YouTube and over there on the side here on YouTube as well, FanDuel has Tennessee as a 3.5-point favorite. Typically, home team gets about 3 points, so it looks like Tennessee's a half-point favorite, really, if you want to shave that off. 3.5-point favorites, and the total is sitting at 55.5. Score prediction for you, Andrew Stefaniak. Who do you have winning, and what is your final score prediction?
It's going to be a really fun football game. Great atmosphere. It's going to be. I think this could be the game of the week in the SEC. It's going to be a good one. My thought here is this going to be a low-scoring affair, high-scoring affair? I lean kind of in the middle. I think that this is a game, whichever team, I think these teams are similar in a lot of ways to where whoever got to play this one at home is gonna win this one. That's why I lean toward the Vols winning this game. I have Tennessee winning 31-27 and covering that line.
I like it. I'll take Tennessee as well. I am again, I don't try to live by trends, but I am big on the trends. I mean, there's mansions in the desert for a reason, right? A&M has not been good on the road under Jimbo Fisher the last couple of years. Tennessee has been really good at home under Josh Heupel the last couple of years. Give me the Vols to win 35-28, cover that line, that over 55.5, and of course that spread, that total. And I like Tennessee by a touchdown at home. Now, I think some of those 35 points, maybe a touchdown or two is going to be set up by great field position. Could it be a defensive turnover? Could it be a great punt return? Could it be a mistake by A&M? Something to give Tennessee a short field on a couple of those drives, and you got to cash in. But give me the Vols 35-28. Should be an outstanding atmosphere. If you're watching, if you're listening, you're going to be inside Neyland Stadium. Have fun. If you're a Vols fan or an Aggies fan, should be what a college football environment is all about. Checker Neyland. There's going to be orange and white everywhere. And, of course, it is Game of the Week, CBS, 3:30 Eastern Time. And that is always an honor for whoever plays in that time slot each and every week. All right, for Locked On Vols, I am Eric Cain. Andrew Stefaniak for Locked On Aggies. Check out both of our work. If you are an Aggies fan listening to this crossover, come check out Locked On Vols for your scouting report for the game. Same for the Vols fans. Check out Andrew's work at Locked On Aggies leading up to the game for some more inside perspective on the Texas A&M Aggies. But for Locked On Podcast Network, I'm Eric. He is Andrew, and appreciate you guys joining us here for a crossover Locked On Vols and Locked On Aggies.